Hey guys, today I'm going to keep this fairly short and simple. I want to talk about how to strengthen what you do as a writer. A lot of people say that to be a successful writer, you have to be a reader. And I don't know if that's 100% accurate. I believe that you can be a writer without being a reader. I did it for the longest time. But I can say that now that I am an avid reader, someone who reads on a daily basis, I can say that there is merit to being a reader as well as a writer. In all the learning I've done along the way, I've realized that I can only absorb so much information at any given time. This requires me to get a firm understanding of the foundation, so to speak, and then I can go back, revisit the same subject matter, and absorb more information on top of it to start building on top of that foundation. And I've noticed this seems to be pretty common no matter what you're researching. I happen to apply it to books because that's where I spend the most of my time. In reading books, you learn a lot. You're going to learn how to format, you'll increase your vocabulary, you'll learn how to structure sentences, you'll learn how to format in different ways. It's kind of a learn by doing type of thing in most cases, but whenever you incorporate reading on top of what you've already learned as a writer, you're able to piece together the way other people do things and just make it flow a little smoother. It's important to state that it is not required for you to be a reader to be a writer. However, I believe that in order to be a better writer, you have to be a reader as well. When I was younger, I was never a big reader. It was hard for me to get into a book. A lot of that was just I wasn't overly proficient at reading. I'd have to read the same passage 5 or 6 times just to understand it. And then I could go on to the next passage and have to read it. It took forever to read a full book just because I was so slow at the process. And I wasn't overly thrilled with that concept, so for me, reading was more of a chore than anything. It wasn't that I didn't really like reading, I hadn't found anything to engage me. And, back then I was reading Goosebumps books, which I relatively enjoyed them. I didn't get into Dragonlance or any of that stuff. And really, I didn't know really that I was a big nerd at that point in time. I had a pretty sheltered childhood of what I had access to. It wasn't until I became a teenager where I really started learning who I was. It wasn't until I got into high school I started reading slightly bigger books. And of course by then I was really exploring my nerd roots. So I got into, the Diablo, the Sin War books. I got into the Alien vs. Predator books. I got into the Warcraft books. In reading these books that I was more tailored to, books that I enjoyed, and again, this is long before I ever thought about becoming a writer. I was still slow, but I was improving and I was getting faster and more able to understand what was happening without having to reread a whole lot of things. And then, of course, I became a writer, and I still wasn't much of a reader at that point. But at some point, I realized that I needed to start reading more in order to be a better writer. As far as reading goes, I've found that it's hard to find time. Honestly, as a writer, it's hard to find time to do anything. Therefore, you have to make time. For me, the easiest way to make time to read is, honestly, set a book by the toilet. Nobody really wants to talk about what you're doing when you're on the toilet. In the past couple months alone, I've probably read 6 books, just a chapter at a time, while sitting on the toilet. And that's not to say that I'm in there all the time, but, once or twice a day, go in there, grab your book, read a chapter instead of playing on your phone, and before you know it, you'll be through the entire book. If you don't have the time to read, which again, having a book there by the toilet, even if it's a Kindle book, you can sit there and spend 15 minutes scrolling Facebook, or spend 15 minutes reading a chapter. I believe at the end of it, you're going to be better suited by reading the book than you are doing nothing on Facebook. I read more than that. I read when I'm in the bathroom. I read with my daughter every day when she gets home from school. Of course, now we're in the summer, so I've had to set alarms to remind us to do that. I read other books, like right now I'm on the Sword of Truth series. The TV show I absolutely loved, and I've tried to read those books numerous times and I failed. I could never get through the first chapter of the first book. I finally finished that entire first book and now I'm on to the second. It's going well so far. I've made it through. It's a little sluggish from time to time, but I think that's just a difference in author voice. And I read about one craft book every month. And a craft book, I feel, is any book that either teaches me how to do a small part of my craft slightly better, or teaches me a marketing tactic, or just anything. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's all about gaining knowledge. And I read one of these craft books every month. I'm not big on nonfiction. The craft books kind of fill in that void. Reading is also important to explore ideas and concepts different from your own. If you can explore these and just get a good feel for the way things are flowing, it'll give you a different perspective and way to look at the world. Even if you don't use this for your main characters, it's good to have different perspectives from your side characters. By exploring these other works, by escaping into these stories, and reading not just for the purpose of being a writer, but reading for the enjoyment of it, you will start to piece together and really grow as a person as well as an author. The other side of that, being a writer, is going to have a huge impact on how you read. It is extremely difficult to look at a book for entertainment purposes when your natural inclination is going to be to look at it objectively. You're going to want to break it down. You're going to want to see the pieces of the story, see how it fits together. They use this tactic here, they use that tactic there. It's really easy to get caught up in those details. So honestly, when you're reading, just try to shut all of that out and read the story for the sake of reading the story. You will still pick up on those bits and pieces, but really, once you've learned to ignore them, they'll passively be stuck in your mind and help you to grow your own stories. If nothing else, you at least have the option to see the way other people do things to strengthen your own craft. And a lot of times, if I see a technique that I like, I will try to incorporate that technique in my next book. The most important thing is that you have continuity, especially when it comes to formatting and stuff like that. As long as you're doing the same thing consistently, you'll be okay. But it's also good to try other approaches and see what works for you to find your own voice. That's pretty much all I've got for you today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and get off of here, and we will talk to you guys next time. Bye.